What if the success you've spent your entire life chasing can never give you what you're actually looking for? Buckle up. This is one hell of an impactful conversation. Today, I have the opportunity to sit down with former Navy fighter pilot, 8-figure entrepreneur, investor, and wealth coach, Mike Brown. And Mike and I discuss a problem affecting countless successful entrepreneurs, executives, and high performers. Achieving everything you thought would make you happy, only to discover you still feel empty. As I mentioned, Mike is an entrepreneur, an investor, a speaker, a wealth coach. And before founding and exiting an 8-figure oil and gas investment firm, he flew FA-18 Super Hornets for the Navy, combining the tactical precision honed in the cockpit with real-world experience navigating complex financial situations. Today, he coaches entrepreneurs on bridging the gap between wealth and freedom. He hosts the Money Stories and Inner Circle podcasts and speaks on stages about money, sovereignty, and living richly in the present. He's also the author of the forthcoming book, Be Rich Now, which will be releasing later this fall, 2026. You're going to want to listen to this conversation at least twice. It's essential you have something available to take notes with. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Let's dive in. Mike, you coach incredibly successful individuals and you specifically help them to learn how to live richly in the present. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think that so many of us are handed a definition of what success is supposed to look like, and this comes by way of personal experience, right? I did all the things that I was supposed to do to make you happy. I worked hard in school. I went to a top university. I tested myself in combat by flying F-18s in the Navy. I got out. I built a successful company. I had the house. I had the cars. And I woke up and went, "Oh no, is this really it?" And realized I was trapped inside of my life. And I think that's a common experience for people who have climbed the ladder of success. They stand at the top of the mountain at some point, realize that the view up there is empty, and oh no, if all of this external success and possessions and money and achievements didn't make me happy, what's going to? And so that's what I help people dive into. Go, okay, if that didn't work, what will? And so that's where we can start.
Where do most entrepreneurs get off track? Because I'm guilty of it. You might relate as well. Like we're working to one day be able to experience all of these things, this time freedom, this financial freedom, more time with our kids, our loved ones. Yet it's always after I achieve this milestone. Why, in your experience, do high performers like you and I and the listeners get stuck in this pattern of always it's after the next goal?
Yeah, you nailed it, right? Like this is a symptom of what I call "I'll finally be happy when," right? And
Yeah.
from the time we're very young, we're told to like delay your pleasure, delay your life until after you achieve some goal. Work hard, and you'll be successful, right? This is repeated by well-meaning parents, coaches, friends. Again, from the time we're very young, and the reality is that the joy is in the process. And if you can't inhabit your life and feel happy now, achieving some external victory or milestone isn't going to make things any different, right? Because fundamentally, you're still the same person inside. So,
Yeah.
how can we craft a life where the things that I'm doing in service of that goal are actually the things that light me up and make me feel alive and allow me to inhabit my own life without making my happiness or fulfillment or joy contingent on some external condition, right? And so that's the antidote to "I'll finally be happy now" is I'll finally be happy in the process.
It's funny, the timing of this. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and he's got 8 figures stocked away. He's done really well for himself. And he's coming to me because of this very reason. He feels empty. He feels hollow. And I asked him, I said, "What do you enjoy?" This is the longest awkward silence I've ever been a part of on a coach client call because he candidly, to the best of his ability, He couldn't tell me. He didn't find joy. In his words, he felt numb. He felt flat without being in the office and trying to put more money in his bank account. He didn't know who he was. And I have experienced as a coach so many individuals attach their self-worth to their income, their success. So for somebody who's coming to you to begin solving that problem, how do you begin getting them to find joy in the process again?
Yeah. So number one is, let's define the life that you actually want. Right. And
Mm.
and and to your point, this can actually be, it sounds simple, but this can actually be a very destabilizing question for people. Asking someone, what do you want? Um, can be really hard because most of us don't know. We're told what to want, right? The big house, the cars, the big business, whatever it is. And so actually unraveling the process of like, hey, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my life to feel like? What are my values? What's important to me? So I actually walk people through a process of defining their pillars of wealth. So what does
Mm.
wealth actually mean? And to me, wealth is a feeling. Wealth is a felt sense of freedom. And because it's a feeling,
Oh.
it can only be experienced in the present moment, right? So the past is gone as soon as I finish this sentence. The future is a fairy tale that only exists in our imagination. So if you want to feel wealthy, that can only be a present tense experience. So what are the things that are going to make me actually feel wealthy in the present
Yeah.
moment? And when we look at that, and especially if we and look, this is sort of a problem of privilege or a problem of success, right? If someone is struggling to pay their mortgage or their credit card or whatever, like, it is really hard to feel wealthy in the present, right? So this is sort of, a you've got to have enough money to close the open loops, right? And
Yeah.
so if someone's young and in the grind, like, hey, like, keep building, right? Like, keep
Mhm.
working till you get to a place where there is some stability, there's some disposable income. But at some point, the pursuit of more actually becomes a detriment to that feeling of
Yeah.
freedom, right? So what is the money for? How can I use that to increase that felt sense of freedom in the
Mm.
present moment, in my life as it exists? And what happens when people do this exercise, far and away, is they realize the things that are keeping them from feeling free in their life don't need any more money, right? They actually just need to make changes. Maybe I need to put my phone away and be present with my kids at dinner. Maybe I need to work less. Maybe, whatever those things look like, tend to actually not require more incremental wealth from a financial perspective.
Love that. And I would argue too, most people know these things. They know they should be doing less time on their phone, eating better, sleeping better, being present with their children, their significant other. Yet there's all these unconscious patterns running about my identity is so enmeshed in my worth, the amount of money if I'm a male, I'm a provider for the household. I've got to be out hunting and killing every day. So I love your description of like wealth is a feeling. And I want to use that to shift into, your time as a Navy fighter pilot. Hesitation and the inability to be focused and present was literally dangerous, like a life or death scenario. In entrepreneurship, though, this ability to slow down, to reflect, and sometimes just do nothing is equally important. So I'm curious to know, was there a point where that mindset that made you so successful as a Navy fighter pilot began working against you as you stepped into this entrepreneurial chapter of life?
Yeah, look, I mean, I always say that our patterns are actually our superpowers until they become a limitation, right? So I grew
Yeah.
up with 5 kids. I had a very, intense mom. She drove us to be successful, and if you wanted to get attention at the dinner table of my family, you better have gotten an A on a test or won your soccer
Mhm.
game or whatever. So we grew up in a very competitive environment, and this is an awesome core wound to have if you want to be successful, right? Like, this is what drove me to work hard and achieve all of those things. But eventually, as I started becoming more and more successful, hitting the goals, getting the money, and eventually selling my company, I realized that the external validation wasn't working. Finding
Mm.
love, seeking love through achievement, wasn't filling this hole inside of me. And I say often from stage, the day I sold my company, I thought I would never be unhappy again. And I woke up and I was still the same person. And I went, oh
Yeah.
shit. Like, now what? Right? If this ultimate thing that I've been working for my entire life didn't work, like, how am I going to find that? And the reality is, it has to come from within, right? So I have to start turning internal. And in order to do that, busyness becomes the enemy, right? And so I think
Mm.
one of the first things that I see with entrepreneurs is a lot of that busyness, a lot of that growth at all costs, a lot of that, hustle grind culture is actually keeping them from being present because they don't want to feel what might be bubbling under the surface
Yeah.
if they were to remove the busyness. And so, people love to say like, "Oh, but if I sold my company, I wouldn't retire. I wouldn't be able to sit still. Like I'd have to start something new." And I say, okay, hey, let's pause. Why not? What would actually keep you from sitting in stillness for 12 months, right? Like, what are you afraid of if you're not covering that up with busyness might come to the surface? Let's start there because that's probably what's keeping you from being happy in the present.
In your experience, what is typically bubbling under the surface that is so easily masked by that busyness?
Yeah. So there's, for me, you know, it's all flavors of the same ice cream, same fundamental
Uh,
ingredients, right? There's only a few questions underneath that sort of everything can be reduced into. Number one, am I safe? Right? If we grew up in an
mm,
unsafe environment, we're constantly looking to an external environment to create that safety. Number two, am I loved? Right? Am I loved and accepted by the people around me without my success, without my achievements? Am I seen for
mm,
who I really am? And then number three, am I worthy? Am I worthy of the success that I've created? And everything sort of boils down into one of those three categories. And so clearing that surface noise, getting rid of some of the busyness, giving us the chance to sit in that stillness will start to help surface those questions that have been maybe buried by that noise.
Dude, we speak the same language. I tell prospective clients often, like, you see the most successful people on paper, yet everything comes back to, am I worthy, deserving, and capable of love, of being? Is it safe to be who I am? So I love hearing you echo that for you personally. Back then, as you began making that transition and going inward, and even now, do you have some form of a daily silence practice?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to find meditation more than a decade ago. I started hearing guests on the Tim Ferriss podcast talk about meditation, and I was like, oh, I wonder what there must be something to this. And then as I sort of dove into the personal development journey, my practice deepened. So I kind of view personal development as two axes: waking up and cleaning up. So waking up
Mm,
is through meditation, spirituality, whatever that means to you, connecting with a greater sense of something greater than self, right? The sense of interconnectedness of all beings in reality. And then cleaning up is you know, going into the shadow work, facing the trauma, where did our patterns come from? And those two sort of need to be interwoven, right? Like cleaning
mhm.
up alone will still leave you sort of feeling empty if without a greater sense of something beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And the waking up work can still leave people as a train wreck, even if they have a deep spiritual practice. If there's no shadow work that they've completed, so one is incomplete without the other. But I dove headfirst into coaching, into meditation, into psychedelic therapy, like every modality known to man. And the through line, back to your question, is meditation. And
Yeah.
so I found a Tibetan Buddhist master, and
Mm,
I became a student of his. I now serve on the board of an organization called the Wisdom Dojo, which teaches meditation to veterans who have done psychedelic assisted therapy.
yeah.
And the deeper I go into that practice, the more I start to realize that a lot of the things that I've come to in my own life, through experience, turns out the Tibetans have been talking about this for a really long time, right? Like the Buddha got it right. And really every wisdom tradition, I think, is sort of the same flavor. They all point at the same fundamental nature of reality, and it's there waiting for us, right? Like it's as they say, it's right there if you're willing to look. So close, it's like your eyelash; you can't see it.
What did you find in this experience early on you were avoiding by dodging the moments of silence and solitude?
Yeah, very much. It was a question of worthiness.
Mm,
Am I lovable and am I worthy? And for me, we have this hard work story. that we attach to our identities, right? And this is deeply woven into our society. Is that nothing worth doing is worth doing if you're not working hard.
Yeah.
All the variations of that story. But reality is, if hard work was actually the key to success, there'd be 7 billion rich people on the planet because go tell a guy who's laying bricks or sweeping the
Yeah.
floors that they're not working hard and they just need to work harder, right? So hard work cannot be the only factor in success. But um, I started my first company in the midst of a booming oil and gas industry, and as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. We were in the right place at the right time. Now, I get some credit. Like I made really good decisions in that right
Hmm.
place and right time. But the reality is, I was in a very strong tailwind environment, and for lack of a better descriptor, like we got rich quick. Like we didn't have to work that hard to
Hmm.
harness the tailwinds of the boom, which actually left me feeling really unworthy because everyone and people wouldn't even believe me.
Uh-huh.
I'd be like, I didn't actually have to work that hard. Now, again, I made really good decisions. I was a great investor. I found deals that you know we made a lot of money on. But that's not work in the traditional sense. I wasn't hustle
Sure.
and grinding, and so I felt very unworthy of the success
Mm.
because I saw so many people around me, especially fellow veterans, that were struggling, that were working very hard, and so I felt like a fraud. And so I started investing in veteran led startups. I mean, I essentially sure was shotgunning my money into all of these other people, getting rid of it as
Yeah.
fast as I possibly could because I didn't actually feel worthy of the success.
Knowing what you know now, and assuming for the sake of this conversation that younger version of you would be willing and open to receive such a message, what do you wish he knew the moment maybe you started coming into that money and you started scaling so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, number one is that it's actually a trap. The whole
Hmm.
worthiness conversation is a trap. There's actually nothing we can do to be worthy of wealth, or put on its head. All of us are inherently deserving of everything that
Mm.
we ever dreamed of, right? And so there's not actually anything you can do to become worthy, right? We are inherently worthy. You are always free. You are always loved. And so starting from that position, cool. If there's nothing any of us can do to be worthy, or again, we're worthy from the get go, no matter what we do. How can I use this now to actually help others, help decrease suffering in the world? Use
Mm.
my wealth in service of a purpose greater than myself. And ultimately, I don't want to skip ahead too far to the end, but when I work with clients who are having this meaning purpose type crisis, my answer is always the same: is go find somebody, anybody, and help them. You don't need to scale. You don't need to think about how you're going to impact a million lives. Just go find somebody to mentor or to make an impact in their life directly and follow that track. See how that feels. And then do it again. And then do it again. And if you do it enough times and it starts compounding, that's how we connect to that sense of meaning and purpose that we're all seeking.
And I think one of the through lines that I want to just highlight and bring about to make sure it wasn't missed is instead of this constant doing, that worthiness equation or that box is checked simply by being
Correct.
you, being authentically who you are, and bringing your unique gift into the world. And I love that because I've struggled with it too as I've made some significant shifts in my coaching, my business over the last decades. It's like, what do I have to do to be worthy of this success? Who do I have to befriend? And at the end of the day, it's only taken me further away from the goal. And I see that all the time in my clients. So it's the way that you broke that down, really clear, really well said. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and look, that's hard earned wisdom through a lot of deep diving in therapy and coaching
Yeah.
and in meditation. It's almost it's the cosmic joke, right? That the answer is there uh, anytime that we're willing to look. But it really is very confronting for folks who have found worthiness through achievement, or
Hmm.
through building their identity as someone who wins, who succeeds. If there's nothing you can do to be worthy of success, then who are you without your achievements? Right. So
Yeah.
so not only are you facing this worthiness question, but in order to answer that question, now you're facing an identity loss. And that can also be very destabilizing. And so people will do anything to protect themselves from that catastrophic identity loss.
Well said. And circling back to one of your initial points in the first few minutes, I found too that over the years we have to redefine success. We have to redefine what it means to win. Like for me, a lot of my winning is how am I showing up present as a father now? My listeners know I've got a 19-month-old boy. You might hear him just outside, and like that rocked my world in so many great ways, but it really challenged me to redefine how I measure success, presence, a good day, a win, which has now altered the trajectory of both my business and just my life as a whole. And it's been so incredibly valuable. It didn't come without its challenges and hardships, of course, but it required redefining success for this new chapter of life.
Yeah, well, and one of the biggest questions that people, when we talk about this, redefining success, people say, well, if I start this work, will I lose my edge? Right?
Dude,
Will I
yes.
lose the thing that makes me successful? Will I lose the thing that makes me ambitious? And my answer to those people is like, if your edge is driven by darkness, if your edge is driven by unworthiness, if your edge is driven by lack, probably you will probably lose that edge. But the edge that you build in its place, right? And this is I think a huge misconception, and one that I work very hard to dispel in my book, is that contentment and ambition are not mutually exclusive, right? But entrepreneurs think, well, if I'm content with what I have, does that mean I can't want more? Does that mean I can't dream bigger? Right. But if you're in alignment, right? If you know, and I think the path to peace is actually the ability to hold paradox, to hold two beliefs that seem to be opposing at the same time. So I am worthy of love and perfect exactly the way I am, and I'll never stop, right? I have everything that I could ever want, and I want to build something meaningful, bigger than I've ever done before. Those aren't mutually exclusive. If you can hold both of those at the same time, that's actually the path to peace. And paradoxically, it's the path to building something way more meaningful than if you're building just to prove that you're worthy of love.
Dude, I feel like you've been in my brain the last few weeks. I've been having conversations about like a lot of clients have been coming to me like, I'm afraid that if this work's going to make me lose my edge. And I echo a very similar response that you just shared. But yeah, it might lose, actually Elliot, our mutual connection that brought us together. He's a mentor of mine for the last few years. And I like the way he articulates it is he says like that anger, anxiety, or that prove it energy is like burning dirty fuel. The way I've
Yeah.
changed it is it's like NOS in a sports car. It's going to go fast. It's going to go furious, but it was never meant to sustain you the entire journey. Whereas as you can look within and begin to unlearn and let go of all these beliefs and toxic emotions no longer serving you, now you can enjoy the ride and go further than you ever imagined.
Yeah, I love the dirty fuel, the clean fuel analogy. And I think you pointed to something important there is that dirty fuel burns hot, right? That edge, that driving energy, proving energy from lack does burn really hot, and it allowed you to go far very fast. And in my experience, the clean fuel is quieter, right? The clean fuel is it doesn't burn as hot because it's not driven by this lack, but it's so much more sustainable, and eventually may not burn as hot, but burns in such a more powerful way, right? And it's a difference in push pull. Like I'm running away from being not enough. I can run really fast, but if I'm running towards something that lights me up, that fills my
Yeah.
soul up, right? That it makes it feel effortless, right? And so what I talk about is shifting from discipline, which to me
Hmm.
discipline means doing things I don't want to do so that I can get something.
Hmm. Okay.
Devotion is I care so
Mm.
much about this thing. I'm going to wake up and do it and it feels effortless, right? So like my meditation
Hmm.
practice feels like devotion. I wake up and meditate 42 minutes every morning because that's my favorite part of the day, right? I don't have to discipline my way into meditation. And yes, are there some days where I don't feel like it? Yeah, totally, right? That's a very human thing. But I don't have to force myself, right? It's a pull energy, and the same thing with writing. Like I love writing. I would write anyway. Like this is what I want to be doing, whether I got paid or not.
Mm. When did you get clarity on this current chapter of life you're living? You exit this company that's massively successful and quite quickly. When did it begin to fall into place, if you will, that you were starting to live the life you had begun dreaming of prior?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I got that clarity right after selling my company, but I love learning the hard way. So um, I started my coaching practice in 2019, right after I sold. But back to this worthiness question, I was feeling like a fraud. I was feeling unworthy of being a coach. Like I knew
Mm,
that I didn't have to work that hard at this company. I got really lucky, so I started feeling like, well, if I could just prove it again with another company, like then I'd be worthy of coaching
mm.
people. And so I ended up buying a failing e-commerce company from some clients of mine. They were on the verge of bankruptcy, and as someone who loves rushing in and saving the day, another pattern. I bought this company on the verge of bankruptcy, and it was an unmitigated disaster. I started losing $100,000 a month, and I got to a very dark place where, and look, now I get to look back on that time, and I say that I wish upon everyone a loss that brings you to your knees that doesn't make you start completely over. And so,
Hmm.
I lost $1.5 million inside of 18 months. I lost my friend's money. It was a devastating and public um, annihilation. And the gift of that was realizing that this wasn't working, and really realizing that it took me losing what I thought was wealth to actually discover that it was never about the money, and that I didn't need more, and that I had everything I could ever want right in front of me, and um, that's the journey. Then I went back all into coaching. Right, I
Okay.
started finding purpose in helping others, and really sharing this journey with them. And so the first time I spoke on stage, I was at a baby bathwater event, and I just said, "Hey, look, I don't know." I gave the very classic, "I don't know who needs to hear this, but like, here's my journey over the last few years post exit." And I just told them about this loss. I told them about the devastating, crippling anxiety, and like 25 people lined up and were like, "Oh my God, me too. I've been rich and broke so many times. I live in constant
Mm.
fear." And I was like, okay, I'm onto something. If I can start sharing this message and normalizing the fact that, the success, well, look, I've been rich and I've been broke. It's better to be rich, like certainly. But, money itself is not going to make you happy. Success itself is not going to make you happy. And starting to normalize that and voicing that and allowing people to go, oh, thank God, I thought I was the only one. Right? I thought I was the only one that built this life that looks amazing on Instagram, and I feel empty inside. And once we can start having that conversation, now we can actually start that path to peace.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I know so many listeners needed to hear that, to have permission to acknowledge they've failed, they've broke, they've lost it all, they've hurt people unintentionally. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, the through line of our conversation has just been the immense importance of deep work on ourselves. I love your paradigm, waking up versus cleaning up. Will tell you now, I will steal that in some way, shape, or form and
Please
use it
do. It's
again.
not mine. I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Likewise, that's why I interview awesome people like you, so I can selfishly learn and share it with as many more people as possible. But what we haven't touched on that I find interesting, and I have a perspective to share after I hear from you, like the value of doing this deep work requires us, we seek coaches and mentors, but there's a lot of solitude. There's a lot of inward reflection. Yet, to my understanding, you're married, you have two children, you have a family, you have mouths to feed. You need to show up as a present, loving husband, as a present, loving father. How do you align it all? Because you've got this incredible background, this incredible company. You are so active in giving and helping others in your day to day. And you have this loving family who demands the best of you as well.
Yeah, I do think that sitting in silence, sitting in solitude, and taking time for ourselves is fundamental. And I did not find that until later in life. Really, over the last couple years, as my meditation practice deepened, as I had the opportunity to go on silent retreat. Um, you know,
Mm.
Anybody that's ever been curious, I went on a 10-day silent retreat, and total game changer in a way that no other modality does. And what I realized on that retreat is just how much we fill our lives with busyness and shit, like just everywhere, right? And by the way, it's not just bad. Like we're like as high performers, we're relatively good at getting rid of bad habits, but I'm talking about family, friends, connection, even just talking. So I walked away from that retreat saying, I'm going to do 30% less. 30% less of everything,
Mm.
30% less dinner parties, 30% less work, 30%, literally 30% across the board. And that felt really good. So I just started really accelerating that. But I mean, I even realized in my own life, like how much I was talking just to fill the silence. Like we are so wired for distraction. You think about it, you can't even stand in the grocery store line without whipping out your phone and logging into Instagram because we're so conditioned to not be able to just stand there for 30 seconds and not have anything to do. And what I discovered is that distraction is the greatest destroyer of inner wealth. Right? Inner wealth has to be cultivated in silence, in that connection with self, in that connection with source. And if we can
Mhm.
start to remove some of the distractions, remove some of those obscurations, that's how we can start tapping into, that sense of something greater.
How do you role model that to your children? How do you demonstrate or communicate the importance of this self care to your wife?
Yeah. So, number one, I live life at the extremes. They say everything in moderation except for moderation. I actually reject that. Like, I want to live at the full bleeding edges of both sides. So, I will have full on monk mode. I go into writing retreat mode. I meditate. I ride my bike. I spend all day writing. And then I will also go on wild adventure trips, go a party with my friends, and live in both of those, and sort of get
Mm.
my fill on both ends. So I actually try to reject the middle, the compromise of trying to do it all, and recognize that like
Wow.
I want to live at the bleeding edges. So sometimes it's full Zen mode, and sometimes it's full monk mode. And I do the same thing. I mean, with my daughter, I actually we practice meditation every night in bed. That's how we go to sleep together. It's one of her favorite
Mm.
parts of the day. So I am a huge believer in that kids uh, don't care what you say; they only care about what you do. And so for me, I'm just living my life, man. Like I'm living the
Yeah.
life that I want to live, and I think that's actually the greatest gift that we can give to our kids is living your best, most authentic life as a model for so they can see what's possible. And so, I take plenty of time for myself. I spend most of my time, with my wife and kids. But I do think that authentic connection with self is really critical to cultivating that inner sense of peace, that inner sense of freedom. And like I said, I'm today years old. Like I'm still learning truly the power of silence only in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. My listeners know, like, I'm a single dad to an 18-month-old. I have him 50% of the time. And there are days. So I write my son letters almost every day. Well, I don't know when
Mm,
I'll give them to him, but I will one day. But it was something I wrote the other day that's very timely to this is like, more often than not, I wake up and I feel I have to make a choice. Am I choosing sadness, anger, or love today? And
mm.
I don't always win, but I try to choose fearless love because there are days where I feel guilt when I don't have them. I'm on the golf course or I'm doing this cool thing. But back to what you said, I have a deep knowing I have to live my life. And A, I'm going to bring him along for the ride. But B, I want to show him what's possible. So I can't play small because it's a disservice to him.
I love that, but I have a question if you don't mind. Like,
Please, yeah.
what if you didn't have to choose? And when you say choosing sadness versus choosing love, what would it look like for you to allow both of those to be there without trying to have to pick between the two?
So it's a great question from a great coach. And my answer is I've leaned into the acceptance that both can coexist because there are, dynamics of the relationship with his mother that still on occasion I'm doing the great work with the coaches I have to let go of that lingering sadness and anger. And sometimes they are both present. And I just, like the old expression from the Native American tribes of like, which wolf are you going to feed? They can both be there. I'm just going to feed the loving one.
Yeah, I love that, and that I don't know, your child might be a little young for movies, but Inside Out, I think is an awesome
Mm.
movie, the Pixar movie that shows this. And spoiler alert if you haven't seen Inside Out, but at the end, they roll out this marble that's actually both blue and yellow, that's both happy and sad.
Yes.
That sort of encompasses this experience of bittersweetness, right? And I actually had an experience recently with Elliot, since we're on the subject.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at a baby bathwater event, which is like my favorite thing, and it's all my favorite people. It's a big party. I'm having the time of my life. Um, but I got on a call with my group of meditation instructors, and it turns out that one of our fellow instructors had passed. He had
Mm,
taken his own life, and it was devastating. I mean, I just
mm.
it was really gut wrenching to find out that news, and so I just sat with my fellow instructors for the next hour in meditation, and let that grief just fully be there, just
Yeah.
fully come in and inhabit. And then I left the room, took a walk by myself, and I actually went and sat down with Elliot. I started telling him about my friend and his passing. And by dinner that night, I was having the time of my life. Like I was at dinner,
Mm,
we were telling jokes, we were telling stories. And I think we have this idea that I can only be happy or sad, right? Like that if I lost my friend today, how could I be at dinner laughing with my friends? The reality is I'm joking and laughing and telling stories, and I still have a heavy heart. I'm still carrying the memory and the grief of my
yeah.
friend that day, but that doesn't mean I can't go laugh with my friends, right? And so
Yeah.
I ask you that because that's something that I help people with the emotional literacy of like both of those can be there. And again, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I'm grateful you shared that. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. I did a podcast a couple weeks ago, or we're recording in June, so it probably came out in early June. I'm not sure when this will come out, but like studying Kobe. Like
Mm,
Kobe is a great example of so many things, but one
mhm,
thing that I think flies under the radar was his evolution as a man in terms of transforming from emotional reactivity and avoidance to emotional awareness, and then the final stage being acceptance. And he says it really well in like a Jay Shetty podcast and elsewhere, where like he might feel nervous or feel fearful and confident. They can all coexist, and he can accept that both are there. And where most people fall short, take action. And I
mhm.
think that is a great embodiment to what you're sharing too, of just this theme of acceptance and knowing that two, as you said, paradoxically, both can exist. And I think that's such a superpower to develop.
Yeah, I mean, right when we look at the wisdom tradition teachings, right? It's pain is a universal human experience, but
Mm-hmm.
suffering is optional, and suffering to me is bargaining with reality. It's imagining reality can be any different than it is, right? And
Yeah.
so really the felt experience of that is like, okay, I'm feeling sadness right now. That's pain. That feels like pain. But imagining that I shouldn't be sad or that could be any different
Mm,
is actually the suffering layered on top. And so
yeah.
when I shift to this place of acceptance, right? When I allow myself to fully inhabit whatever's arising exactly as it is, the punchline I think for enlightenment or liberation or whatever term that, and those are very charged terms in the West, but is that life doesn't actually get easier, right? When you get to that place of total radical acceptance, it doesn't make the pain go away. And I think Westerners are so attached to this idea that if I do enough self work, if I do enough meditation, if I just go win this prize, it's going to make everything easier. And I can tell you on the backside, like it does not. It does not make life easier. It just gets rid of the suffering, right? It
Yeah.
just gets rid of that layer that we're creating from our mind on top of reality as it is. And the minute you can stop bargaining reality and just shift to this place that you're speaking about of acceptance, that's where things get really vivid. That's where things, and we start to realize that these things we label as negative emotions are actually just emotions. There's no positive emotions or negative emotions. They're all one taste of the same experience with different flavors.
Yeah.
And can I be curious? Can I just let this be here and go, okay, what's this experience of sadness? What does this feel like right now? Where do I feel this in my body? Does it have a texture? Like, can I just be here with whatever's arising? And the more we can do that, the more we can shift into that presence. That to me is wealth.
For the emotionally constipated entrepreneur listening,
Yeah.
walk them through the first action step to begin working towards a place of emotional acceptance.
Great question. So, I'm gonna tackle that from two angles. Back to the
Uh,
waking up and cleaning up paradigm.
yeah.
From the waking up paradigm, let's start with a meditation, right? So, one of the first excuses I hear from entrepreneurs is like, "Oh, I could never meditate. I try to sit, I can't quiet my thoughts." Number one, meditation is not quieting your thoughts. Meditation is a process of allowing your thoughts to be there and not attaching to them and letting them pass like weather. Okay. So as you start to sit in meditation and a feeling or emotion or a thought might arise, can I just be there with that without attaching my identity to it? So the example I like to give is like, if you see a chair, you realize I am not that chair, right? So if you can observe a thing, you are not that thing. And the same thing happens with our thoughts or our emotions, right?
Hmm.
And I actually think the English language itself does a disservice because in Spanish there's two different verbs that mean I am. It's there's ser and estar, right? One
Hmm.
one means I am permanently something versus this is happening to me right now. But we only have one in English. We say I am sad. Well, does that mean I'm sad right now or does that mean I am a sad person? Right? So we actually our language reinforces identification with emotions,
Hmm.
but if we can start to detach ourselves and treat emotions as a thing that we can observe just like anything else, that's how we can start allowing those things to be there and process those. So that's sort of the waking up angle.
Yeah.
The cleaning up angle is the reason most of us are cut off from feeling emotion is because there was a time in our life where that was a survival mechanism, right?
Mhm.
If newsflash, right? A lot of entrepreneurs are forged from very difficult childhoods. Like a lot of us had difficult childhood experiences. And, when you're a kid, you're actually not equipped to deal with those heavy emotional experiences. So what do? Our body shuts us off from feeling as a survival strategy. Okay. Again, works really well until it doesn't. That's got to go somewhere. That gets
Yeah.
stored up. So the fear with entrepreneurs who are cut off from their feeling body is often, well, if I uncork that, like what's under there? What's going to come out? And look, it's scary. It can be scary to go back and repattern inner child and look at, what happened to us as kids and experience that. Um, but I think that work and hypnosis is a great way that you can go back and access some of those memories. Doing trauma therapy, doing psychedelic therapy is a really reliable way to
Mhm.
access a lot of that stored trauma, that stored emotion. So, you know, both of those I think are complementary. But at some point it is like it's going to destroy you, or cut you off from living your best life if you've built a wall between you and feeling the true emotional nature of self.
How would you describe the actual experience of sitting with these uncomfortable emotions?
Yeah. So number one, I tell people like, hey, look, you can do it. Like it's not as overwhelming as you think, right? Like you are built. If you're an entrepreneur, you are built to do hard things. If you are a high performer, you can
Mm.
do hard things. And so what I'll often do with clients, I'll drop them into a meditation,
Mhm.
and ask them to recall a difficult memory or a time when they felt an intense emotion, and then picture that emotion as a color and ball of energy at the center of our chest.
Yeah.
And then through that, I'll just allow that. I'll ask them to allow that ball to expand until it fills the whole room. And to just ask them, can they feel that thing at full intensity and just allow it to be there? And it's a practice, right? And then what happens? I don't want to give a spoiler to anybody who's never done a process like this. And if you haven't, I highly encourage you to try it. When you're allowing it to be there at the full emotion, fill the entire room, be there at raw, full intensity, and place 100% of your awareness on that intensity, what happens? All of a sudden, it starts to dissipate. The energy starts to fade, right? And that is the experience of emotion, is that they arise, they exist, and then they fall away.
Yeah.
And so by bottling them up, we actually are keeping them stuck. We're keeping them stored, when if we were just going to allow ourselves to experience in the raw sensation of whatever emotion that is, eventually it will subside on its own because that's the nature of reality.
Really well said. And I love how you emphasize, like, as high performers, we're built on doing hard things. We're hardwired for that. But it's also been ingrained, especially for men, that the hard work and discomfort that comes with confronting, sitting with, and acknowledging emotions, like, that is so far down a different spectrum of hard, we avoid it altogether. So I love how you kind of hit us with a dose of our own medicine that fuels us to have that next level of success, as we're wired to do hard things. And this is no different. And the reward for doing it, indescribable.
Yeah, the backside of this work, I would say, I mean, it is the solution that all of us have been seeking, that we thought would fill, that we thought entrepreneurship or achievement or success would fill up. This is
Yeah.
the work that actually does give the answer, gives the reward that all of us have so desperately been chasing all of our life.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time talking about meditation. So you can't use this meditation as the answer to this question. Aside from that, are there any other keystone habits or just like non negotiable routines that continue to fuel that clarity, that peace, and that energy you bring every day?
Yeah, I mean, so number one, I think there are seasons in life, right?
Hmm.
I think that there's this idea that we have to have this linear progression, and I think that optimization culture is also an enemy of peace, right? And so the 4 hour morning routine with sauna and read 10 pages and journal 3 questions and then meditate and make your smoothie or whatever. Like, and by the way, all of those things might contribute to overall well being. So I'm all for having some sort of ritual, right? But mine is actually being present and asking, like, what do I actually want in this moment, right? Not
Mm,
forcing myself into, I need this 14-part daily checklist in order to feel good, right? Again, it's selling the life. You just do the things. If you just check all these boxes, that's going to make you feel good. Reality is, hey, like, what's coming up for me right now? Do I want to meditate right now? Do I feel called to write right now? Do I feel called to read right now? And so actually building that emotional literacy, that internal compass of what's arising for me in this moment, what's actually gonna make me feel good. That's actually the habit that I think is underneath all of those things, right?
mm,
Again, we're flipping the solution from prescriptive to intuitive. Like, what's going to feel good to me? So sometimes I'm in a season of writing, sometimes I'm in a season of meditating, sometimes I'm in a season of being outdoors and riding my bike
yeah,
and doing that stuff. Sometimes I'm in a season of sitting and doing nothing. Like, I don't know what the solution is over the
yeah.
long term, but I know what it is right now.
So what I hear is like, it's almost like that invisible routine is that conscious, consistent mental check-in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, love that. What season are you in right now?
I've been deep in the process for the last 3 years of bringing this book to life. It's truly been a war of art, and I'm just putting the finishing touches on the edits. It's shipping soon.
Yeah.
Pre-orders are going to open in a couple months, and it has been such a difficult and rewarding process. And for me, it was, I'm on my fourth total draft rewrite. I burned
Mm,
3 previous versions to the ground. Um, and the process was always like I know what I'm capable of producing. I know what this book wants to be. And in the 3 previous iterations, it just wasn't it. It just didn't feel right. And finally getting to the place of like, okay, I had the courage to I turned in a 72,000 word draft to my editor in December, and she sent it back with the edits, and I was like, man, this just isn't it. And I can tell you, like, after working on it for 2.5 years and going, like, this is still not right.
mm,
Took a lot of courage, but also, man, like, once I did that, once I cut 30,000 words, I rewrote a bunch, and like, I feel so good about what I produced. I feel like the book really delivers on its promise. And and that process is really, I've in the process of writing the book, I became a writer. I found my voice. I found what
mm.
worked. I found the flow in that. So I've been very deep in the writing rabbit hole, and I think I will be here for quite some time.
Knowing you've almost, these are my words, so correct me if I'm wrong, but
Hmm.
this has been a season of intensity for you. Clearly writing
Mm.
on your fourth draft. Do you proactively plan at least a short-term season of rest at the conclusion of this season?
Yeah, this is. I'm sort of in a season, and I have been for a long time of kind of built-in rest. I think my
Hmm.
season of intensity probably doesn't look like what a season of intensity might look like for your maybe average high performer. I just no longer have the capacity to push myself beyond the limits. So I it's built in rest. And the interesting thing about writing is that you actually can't grind it out. At least in my experience, right? Like, art is so much different from entrepreneurship or athletics. Like, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in a season of struggle, I can wake up and grind every day. Like, there's something I can do in my business. But if I'm trying to birth a book to the world, like some days I'll open up the page and like there's just nothing coming. Right. So I have to be with that. I have to allow that to be there as well. Sometimes stillness is the only thing that can actually move the book forward. So it's counterintuitive to someone who's wired to grind their way to achievement.
But I think it demonstrates such wisdom that you've baked in this rest, this downtime, this solitude, because it's sustainable. Because if you were to
Totally.
try to write 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, you would still be stuck blowing up draft number one, going crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's it, right? And like I've just I am living the exact life that I want to be living, and it's
Mm.
I think I'm very fortunate to be able to say that, and I realize that's a very rare thing on this planet. And I've spent a decade defining what that life is and getting really good at inhabiting that life and being present to that life. And so, in many ways, back to what we were saying earlier, like that's the reward for doing the work is like now I know exactly what I want. And look, it doesn't mean I'm immune. Like there are days that I wake up sometimes and like I should be growing faster, I should be writing more, I should be doing more. Um, and when that voice arises, and this was happening very recently as I got closer to the book launch. I found myself being like, I need to do more. And then I would actually just journal out my perfect day. And I go, oh,
Mm.
I'm living this already. Actually, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't need to be doing anything different. Everything that has happened to me, the sum of my experience, good, bad, wins, losses, all of that got me to arrive at this exact moment, prepared for right now. And there's nothing else I could be or want to be doing.
I want to make sure, and I will do this, put the pre-order link in the show notes and then eventually update with the live link. But tell our audience, what is the name of the book and what is the book's promise or core message?
So the book's called Be Rich Now: How to Want
Mm.
Everything You Have. And like I said, it's not a book about contentment. When you read "Want Everything You Have," that may at first be like, wait, what does that mean? It's how to choose and fully inhabit everything that is in your life, and bring conscious intentionality to designing your life in a way that actually is going to deliver on the promise. And in turn, through that process, and it's deep internal work, it's editing your lifestyle, it's truly choosing the obligations and the places where you show up. And by the way, this doesn't mean total freedom, and family is a great example, right? Like if I said I just want to be free to spend my time however I want, well, you can't do that if you have kids. You're actually choosing to give up time with yourself doing whatever you want in order to show up for the people that you love, right? But again, that's a chosen sacrifice, or that's a chosen trade-off that I'm making. So the book is really, how do I get to the place where I've chosen everything in my life consciously? Doesn't mean I like everything in my life, but I have chosen to be
Mm.
exactly where I am. And then from that place, how do I dream even bigger, find my purpose, and find meaning inside of that container?
Amazing. I'm looking forward to reading, and I'll definitely link it below. I know everyone listening will be excited to purchase it. Mike, let me get you out of here on this. For the listener who knows they have deeply attached their self worth to their results, to their income, who knows they are grinding a life that is, I'll be happy when. What's the message you want to share with him or her right now to start charting a different course?
There's no other time than now.
Mm.
Right now is all there ever is. And when you look closely, like I said, the past only exists in a memory. The future's a fairy tale. All there is the present moment. And so if you can't be rich now, if you can't be rich in the present moment, when will you be?
Dude, so good. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about working with you?
Yeah, so check out berichnow.com. That's you can get the first chapter and get to a place where when pre-orders are announced, you can do that. It'll also subscribe you to my newsletter. I write long form every week. And then my favorite place to be on social media is Twitter. It's mbrown_co. And yeah, we'll see you out there.
Mike, thank you so much for a phenomenal conversation.
Paul, appreciate you having me on, man.
I hope you found as much value in that conversation as I did. There were so many nuggets of wisdom, so many unique reframes, perspectives, and frameworks to going inward in creating the life, the weeks, and the days that you deserve, dream of, and desire. I can't recommend enough, if Mike's messaging and energy resonated with you, reach out, pre-order his book, investigate more about what it looks like to work with him in a one-on-one capacity. And as always, I ask, share this episode with somebody in your inner circle, somebody who is truly struggling with thinking that they're one success metric or one additional zero away from finally feeling happy. I thank you so much for listening to today's conversation. Make today great, and I'll catch you in the next one.